All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to bring up the celebrity of celebrities. You've all known him. You've all seen him. He's talked at length about the magic bullet. He's going to tell you some more things about his investigations. We give you a little bit of intro about Cyril Wecht. He has been a medical examiner, a coroner. He's a forensic pathologist who's consulted on the autopsies of RFK, Sharon Tate, JFK, Elvis, Kurt Cobain, John Benet Ramsey, and many, many more. He is a great friend of the JFK Conference. You know, he brings a wealth of experience and knowledge in talking about the magic bullet and other things. And today he's going to be doing a session. Let's see, I just found my notes here. I'm not sure where he was going to be. Well, I'll just go ahead and let him give us the introduction of what he'll be speaking on. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Cyril Wecht.
Thank you. I am delighted to be here with you. I'd like to thank Judith for having invited me and for all of the people who have been working with Judith to present this program. I commend you especially for putting it together, both in live, as I understand it, there in Dallas, and then with the Zoom portion that I am
Unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Hold on.
You hearing
Hold on,
me?
Cyril.
Hello?
We hear you. We hear you.
Okay,
Make sure he's unmuted.
What? Unmuted? What?
You're good.
Yeah, I'm good. Okay. Next slide, please.
Here we go.
Okay. I'd like to mention my book came out last week. The JFK Assassination Dissected. And you have a slide before this one showing the picture of the book. Yeah, there it is. No. Okay, all right, go ahead. Next slide. Okay. So I'm going to hit the highlights. We'll move quickly. You all know the background and we won't waste time on that. My purpose today will be to highlight some things, to refresh, reiterate, and to give you more of a background about this from my perspective as a forensic pathologist. There they are. The configuration, all of you know this, be reminded of it. 30 inches separated Kennedy's front from Connolly's back, and there are the wives of these gentlemen and the motorcycle person behind the left rear wheel. That motorcycle person wound up being so spattered with blood, brain, and tissue when the president was shot in the head that he thought for several seconds that he had been shot. Next slide. There's the route. You're all familiar with that. Keep in mind, right in the center of the picture, the pergola, that white curvy linear structure, and to the left of it on the screen, the right side of the pergola, stood Abraham Zapruder, his wife, his secretary, Marilyn Weitzman, steadying his leg, thank you, to give him support. The cars came down from the lower right-hand corner on Main, and then turned right-hand turn on Houston, and then the arrows showing the screen, the route down on Elm Street. The purple dot represents the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository building, which they claim was the lair of Lee Harvey Oswald. Note that as the cars had been coming up Houston Street, they were coming closer and closer and closer, a straight head-on shot. He waits until the cars turn, and then they're going away from him down Elm Street. What you cannot see clearly here is his view was sporadically blocked by some foliage of the trees. That's when he decides to shoot. Good sportsman that he was. Next slide. And there's another view looking backwards, and the red boxing in the window. Next. Next, go ahead. There they are, happy, jubilant. The sun was shining, the crowds were cheering, the flags were flying, Everybody was excited. It was turning out to be a magnificent day, much, much better than had been expected. They were in love with Jacqueline Kennedy in her pink two-piece suit. Next. Next. Yeah. Okay. Now there are the cars going in the Stemmons. Behind the Stemmons freeway sign, some people think that it's a defect in the film. No, that's blockage from the Stemmons freeway sign, the other side of which denotes that. Okay, next. 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 Now you see Kennedy's been struck, his hands going up toward his mouth and throat. Next. Next. Now, next, look at the position of the white Stetson hat in Connolly's hand. That is extremely important. Keep in mind the bullet moving 2,100 feet per second has gone through Kennedy and essentially 30 inches between the two men. That means that Connolly is essentially struck at the same time. Connolly and his wife insisted to his death that he had been struck by a bullet. It was a second shot after Kennedy had been hit. Next. Next. Look at that hat. Look at that hat. Where is the hand? Where is the Stetson hat? Right there at the shoulder level. The bullet has emerged from Connolly's chest below the nipple. Below the nipple. Under the single bullet theory, the bullet has gone through the right wrist. Okay? After emerging below nipple level. Keep that in mind. This is the proof positive of what an incredible scientific fiasco lie this is. This is not Cyril Wecht and an opinion. This is hard fact. There is the hand with the hat of Connolly, who has, according to the single bullet theory, been shot through the chest, bullet emerging beneath the neck, beneath the nipple, beneath the nipple. How in the hell does it get back up there behind the right wrist? Next. Look, there it is, clear as hell. Now, Kennedy has been struck. The bullet has gone through. Connolly hasn't been struck. He's right. I agree. He hasn't yet been struck. Next. Kennedy now, having been hit, falling a little toward his wife. Next. 313, Crimson Burst, horrible picture in terms of what it depicts. And now let's keep moving the slides one by one as you see the movement of Kennedy's body after he has been hit in the head. Watch, backward and to the left, 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 backward. Okay, okay, go ahead, next. Okay, here's the diagram made by them. It's not my diagram, it's theirs. You'll see in the figure on the right side, a bullet hole there, 7x4 mm right there, okay? And you see, coming back to the figure on the left of the screen, that curvy linear marking up at the base of the neck, which they thought was a tracheostomy. Next. There's Kennedy. The throat wound had been expanded upon because the cuff from the oxygen machine was too wide for the small aperture caused by the bullet, and it had to be expanded upon, not malevolently or surreptitiously, but necessarily. And this is the famous death stare. Next. There is the wound. Back next, please. Here is their sketch, their sketch, okay? These are not mine. Look and see the bullet striking Connolly behind the right armpit, right posterior axillary area, behind the right armpit. Go to the left. There's the bullet wound beneath the nipple. And then you see back to the right, the bullet entering on the back of the distal right forearm, breaking the radius, 1 or 2 large bones from the elbow to the wrist. Figure on the left, emerging from the volar anterior aspect down a little bit, down, down, down on the wrist, on the wrist, on the wrist, on the wrist. There. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Emerging from there and then going into the left thigh. There it is. There it is. Okay. Now, oh God, next, please. This is a fragment, one of several removed from the 2 bodies. I spoke with the chief OR nurse, Audrey Bell. She told me about several fragments having been removed, which she gave to the FBI. The bullet in its original state weighed 161 grains. The bullet recovered, the stretcher bullet, Commission Exhibit 399, the hero of the single bullet theory, which Mark Lane initially dubbed the magic bullet theory, and I and others have continued with that characterization ever since. And we're told that all of these fragments together weighed only 1.5%, from 161 to 158.6, 2.4 grains, exactly 1.5%. Incredible. Next. There's another fragment. Next. There's another fragment. Next. And then there was an assessment done originally. They tried to say that the fragment could be matched up directly, and it came out to be a false, another one of the falsehoods that was promulgated by the Warren Commission people and everybody else in the government who covered up. And it was shown that you cannot make that kind of specific identification between a fragment and a bullet, assuming that it's, a bullet of a similar nature. Next. Next. Okay. Here, regrettably, 2-dimension, the dotted red figure showing you again, right posterior axillary area, and then moving upward. To begin with, the bullet moves upward 11.5 degrees, emerging from the neck. How can a bullet fired from the 6th floor window shooting downward go upward 11.5 degrees? My colleagues never answered that. They said, well, what if the president moved? Yeah, he was not tying his shoe. He wasn't bent down. He wasn't scratching his groin. He was looking up at the crowd. And the bullet then moving upward and then proceeding again forward and slightly downward into Connolly's back and then out of his chest and through up and around like I've shown you on the right forearm and then into the left thigh. Next. The blue line represents the pathway that the bullet would have traversed if it had gone from the 6th floor window in and out of Kennedy. There was nothing to have deflected it in the president. It would have gone continued in that fashion. And instead, it went on the way of the red dotted line. Absurd, absolutely absurd. Next. There is the bullet, pristine, copper jacketed, and that's Commission Exhibit 399, 1¼ inch in length, 1/4 inch in diameter, completely intact. Look at the nose, the cone, and the lower left, slight crimping only in the lower right from the impact of the firing mechanism. There, the bullet completely intact. A bullet that breaks 2 bones does not emerge in that fashion. Next. My favorite slide. If the government said to me, God said to me, Wecht, you can save only one thing from all of the JFK materials you have that you know to be extant, this is what I would choose. The government conducted this experiment, not Cyril Wecht. Somebody there had the decency to say, let's see what happens when a bullet is fired. So coming in from the left, 2 bullets close together, the 2 bullets together there, they were fired into cotton wadding, striking nothing. You do that to see what a bullet looks like just from the impact of the firing mechanism. Look at the base, the slight crimping that you see, the bullet's intact. next to the right, it looks like a bigger bullet. No, it's not a bigger bullet. It's the same exact ammunition, 6.5 millimeter copper jacketed lead core military ammunition, 1¼ inch in length, quarter of an inch in diameter. Look, it is flattened and widened, and that bullet went through one rib of a goat carcass, one rib of a goat. Go to the far right, and that bullet went through the distal end of the radius of a human cadaver. Look at the typical mushrooming up at the top of the bullet, the impact from the firing mechanism. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're the prosecution and Oswald's on trial, you say, ladies and gentlemen, look, I can prove to you that the single bullet theory is scientifically valid, that if a bullet that breaks a rib can look like the bullet second from the right, and a bullet that breaks a radius far right can look like that. Is there any question in anybody's mind that a bullet that breaks both a rib and a radius can look like the bullet at the far left? There it is, Commission Exhibit 399 in all of its pristine grandeur. And that, my folks, is the single bullet theory, courtesy of Arlen Specter. And I bear him no animus. I became friends with him. He appeared on 2 of our conferences here in Pittsburgh in 2003 and 2013. I supported him as a Democratic official in 2004 in his reelection campaign, still running as a Republican. First time I had ever endorsed a Republican. And he was reelected. In 2010, he switched to the Democratic Party. I supported him again in the primary, which he lost. So, but this came from Arlen Specter, who, give him credit, trying to figure out how to overcome the seemingly impossible physical temporal incongruity between the timing of the Zapruder film. I did not mention that the timing showed that Connally was hit 1.5 seconds after Kennedy. Remember, we talked about that, and I showed you that Connally was not hit when Kennedy was hit the first time, 1.5 seconds. They got the best marksman they could find. They got the Mannlicher Gargano, a piece of junk, a weapon, the worst of its genre, a non-automatic bolt-action weapon developed in Italy, where they ludicrously make fun of it. I know, after speaking there at the Institute of Forensic Science, Legal Medicine in Rome, at a invitation to speak about JFK assassination in 1972, and they mocked it and they called it an instrument of love, not a weapon of war. So how do you get over that if it takes 2.3 seconds from shot to shot without allowing time for repositioning and re-aiming? And the film clearly shows that he was struck 1.5 seconds. Well, that is what gave birth to the Warren Commission. The single bullet theory, that one bullet went into Kennedy's back, moved upward 11.5 degrees, exited from the front of his neck, then proceeded hitting Connally behind the right armpit, turning 18 inches in midair after emerging from Kennedy's neck, going over, turning around, hitting Connally in the back, going through his chest at a 27-degree angle, piercing the right lung, destroying 4 inches of the right fifth rib, emerging below nipple level, curving, sweeping back upward and around to go into the dorsal surface of the distal right forearm, and emerging from the forearm, and then proceeding at a downward angle of about 45 degrees into Connally's left thigh, inadvertently just falling out of his left thigh. Connally was operated upon, body was moved, stretcher to stretcher. Nobody had seen a bullet before. A maintenance man trying to get to the maintenance room that afternoon after everybody had left, found the corridor blocked, bent down to move the stretcher, and lo and behold, there was this bullet lying there beneath the stretcher. And that was Commission Exhibit 399. Thank God for Mr. Tomlinson having to urinate. But that bullet would have been found somewhere, sometime. That was a plant. That was a plant, unquestionably so. Okay, next. 26 volumes, fiction. Get those books for your grandson's library, and insist, though, that have a place where they properly belong in the library next to Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer. Go back to my Mr. Possum. The one, go ahead, you just showed it. There it is. I love this Pogo Possum character comic strip some time ago. We have met the enemy and he is us. As soon as the assassination occurred, you can imagine in seconds, in minutes, within an hour or so, our ambassadors in London, in Beijing, in Moscow, in Havana had quickly ascertained with personal visits and phone calls from the White House, did you guys have anything to do with this? Because if you did, you're not going to be around very long. And they quickly determined that it was not the Russians or the Chinese or the Cubans, it was us. And that was the necessity of covering this up. And they seem to have gotten away with it. Let me go back and show you how absurd this is. The president has been shot multiple times, as we've depicted. Determination of angle and trajectory and sequence, differentiation between entrance and exit, correlation of those wounds with Connolly's wounds. That's a formidable task for the most skilled forensic pathologist. Who did they call in to do this autopsy? Humes and Boswell, two career naval pathologists at Bethesda Naval Hospital who had never done a gunshot wound autopsy in their entire careers. So if anybody there in the audience knows of anybody, family or friends, who insist that the Warren Commission report is right, you ask them if they have any intelligence, if they have an IQ of over 100, make it 90. If somebody has shot multiple times, let alone the president of the United States, who's going to do the autopsy? Okay, everybody knows that from Quincy and TV and novels and movies and so on. You call in the best, and the best were available to them within 1 hour drive and flying time in Baltimore, Philadelphia, Richmond, Boston, and Cleveland. They were all right there, and they had 7 hours plus to get those people in place. They never did that. Humes and Boswell, I will repeat that, never had done a gunshot wound autopsy in their entire careers. Get angry, folks. Get angry. Get pissed off. Write to the New York Times. Scream and yell. Go. Let them have it. Any Warren Commission report supporter and sycophant, tell them what an imbecile they are. What an imbecile. That is what you want as an American citizen? It would never happen, and has never happened in any other country of the world where a king, prime minister, president has been shot and killed. The top-notch people, medical, legal, forensic pathologists, people called in. That is. So I talk about all of this in my book. I'm not here to sell books, but if you have an interest in knowing this case, as well as some fascinating vignettes of a personal nature, my meeting with George de Mohrenschildt, fascinating character, a white Russian oil guy in Texas who reaches out to befriend Lee Harvey Oswald, takes him under his wings. According to the Warren Commission, I met with de Mohrenschildt and talked with him down there at his home in Texas. My meeting with Marina Oswald, it is all there. My meetings and discussions with two people that became personal friends, Richard Sprague, and now deceased, head of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, and then he resigned in disgust at the way they were handling it. And then his assistant, Robert Tannenbaum, a top-notch author, functioning still as an author, living in California. My discussions and friendships with them, my discussions about the background of Jack Ruby and how that all came to pass, and the elimination, conveniently, of Lee Harvey Oswald. So, my friends, that is the story. That is the story. Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. I'm proud to have a foreword in my book by Oliver Stone. And some wonderful blurbs. Next, please, by Alec Baldwin, Dr. Tom Noguchi, my esteemed colleague, still alive, retired coroner medical examiner, who consulted me in the Robert F. Kennedy case, Sharon Tate, La Bianca, Manson murder cases, Marilyn Monroe, Geraldo Rivera, who invited me, and I flew in from Vail, Colorado, where I was vacationing with my family on a ski trip. We became friends, and he showed the Zapruder film, Rob Reiner, the bottom. So I'm proud to have those blurbs. Book is available from McFarland Publishing Company. McFarland, you can get it directly from them now, or you can order from Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and the books should be available in about a week if you order it from them. But I strongly recommend the book because it flows in a nice, smooth fashion without getting too heavy, too tendentious, too buried down, burrowed down in a lot of detail, which requires some kind of a scientific background. So there it is, folks. So I'll stop here and answer questions for a few minutes. You have a little bit of time. If anybody has a question or a comment, something that needs to be clarified. I know I spoke hurriedly, but I wanted to get all of this across. Please, Mr. Moderator.
And so I will repeat the questions when they're asked.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, we're going to get questions now. If you want to come over to the microphone. Okay. Okay. I'm going to repeat it after he says it. Do you think the x-rays, the pictures of JFK's head have been faked to show the back of his head fully intact?
Pictures were altered. Oh, thank you for raising the question, which reminds me of something very important that I left out in my discussion. The president's brain was not examined at the time of the autopsy quite properly. You can't examine a brain that has been traumatized in that fashion. It'll flow. It's a thick, heavy, viscous as much as it is a solid. You place it in formalin, affix it a solution to harden, and the consistency changes from that of a well-done soft-boiled egg to a hard-boiled egg. And 2 weeks later, like a hard-boiled egg, cutting it, I don't mean to be crude, but no better metaphor, you slice it and then you examine the brain, and you would have seen the hemorrhagic trajectories of the bullets as they traversed the brain to prove that Kennedy had been shot from the rear as well as from the front. Well, guess what? They went back 2 weeks later and the brain was not dissected. Look in the autopsy report and you'll see serial coronal sections side to side, parallel fashion of the brain are not made in order to preserve the specimen. Preserve it for whom? For Jackie Kennedy's mantelpiece, for her grandchildren? Can you imagine that? And that bullet, as we sit and talk here today, remains unaccounted for. Nobody has ever accounted for that bullet. And this nonsense about the Kennedys took the bullet and so on. I was Democratic Committee Chairman, Allegheny County, 1978. I invited Ted Kennedy to be our keynote speaker. We used to have these big, huge rallies of thousands of people. Picked him up at the airport, sat next to him for 3 hours through the dinner, drove him back to the airport. We were alone all that time. Never one time did Senator Kennedy say to me, "Cyril, please stop talking about my brother's brain. It is so traumatic to me and my family and Jacqueline and her kids. Please." Never once. 78. He sat next to me. I didn't bring it up. It's for him. But can you imagine if I was talking about something like that and they had buried the brain? Saul had to say before that the brain was buried. We did that. Okay. The grave digger, when the body was moved, said the coffin was never opened. Nothing was placed in the coffin. Okay, thanks. The brain remains unaccounted for. That's part of the Warren Commission defend our sycophants burden. Where's the brain, folks? Where's the brain? Does it bother you? Does it bother you? I'll tell you that if Oswald had gone to trial, this would have been spoliation of evidence. He could not have been tried because that's key evidence for the defense, and the prosecution was responsible for its destruction. Whatever they did with it. And sorry, Mr. Prosecution, come back another time when you have the brain, because Oswald cannot defend himself without that brain. Thanks.
Another question. What about the crushed vomer, VOMER, and the globe of the right eye? How could he have not been disfigured if these wounds happened when he was alive?
Well, you can have fractures of bones behind the eye without a disfiguration externally. Those bones are not real thick and heavy, and they're behind the eye. So you can have that, but you see some slight disfiguration, some slight ecchymosis, discoloration. But another point I want to make about the gunshot wounds, that the doctors at Dallas all placed a bullet wound in the back of the head at the base, right occipital region, and talked about cerebellum, that part of the brain which is located posteriorly and inferiorly, having been lacerated. These were good old boy Texas surgeons who had operated and worked on thousands of people in the emergency room there at Parkland Hospital, including of whom was the chief neurosurgeon, Kemp Clark. Okay, the doctors, the comedians who did the autopsy, they said that the cerebellum was intact, the occipital region of the skull was intact. Who do you believe? Who do you believe? The doctors who worked on the president there for half an hour and saw and depicted every one of them in agreement consistently with each other, 18 of them and so on? Or do you believe Humes and Boswell, these two career naval pathologists who were under strict orders about what to do and what not to do, including 4-star admirals and generals in the autopsy room that night at Parkland Hospital attending the autopsy?
Another question is, did Arlen Specter ever admit to Cyril he knew the truth?
No, I didn't press him on it. I have reason to believe, and a couple of people in Philadelphia told me about some meetings with him. He was embarrassed. He was a very intelligent guy. No, I never pressed him.
The final question is, oh, maybe not final, we'll know in a second. What do you think about the theory that Kennedy's brain was buried when he was reburied the second time?
No, I covered that. The gravedigger, the people in charge of the cemetery, made it very, very clear that the brain was not brought there. Nothing was brought there. Nothing was placed inside the coffin. Nothing.
Any other questions? One more. Real question, do you think the head x-rays were faked or not?
Some of the x-rays are missing. We don't know what was depicted in those x-rays. So the x-rays can be studied, and I have no reason to say that they are false. You know, once you get into what some of my friends, my fellow WCR critic researchers do, when they start saying that this is false and this is false and this is false, you got to be careful. You can't go pick and choose what is false and what is real. That makes you unscientific just as well as the Warren Commission defenders are concerned. So be very, very careful about that in saying that this is false and this is fake and this is unreal and so on, because what are you left with to talk about and decide what to evaluate and analyze in this case? Well, I thank you, folks. Judith, thank you for inviting me. Peter and others there, pleasure. And I hope that you have a good remainder of the conference. Best wishes to all of you for a pleasant, relaxing Thanksgiving, followed 2 days later by Hanukkah. If you're not Jewish, get some Jewish friends to help you celebrate. It's a wonderful Jewish holiday, a lot of good food, a lot of gift exchanging, and so on. So Thanksgiving on Thursday, Hanukkah on Saturday for 8 days, and you'll have a wonderful time preceding the Christmas holiday. Thank you, folks. Thanks.
Thank you.